Active PE, planning and delivering with core activities. After watching this presentation, you should understand the benefits of a positive PE curriculum, understand the difference between the active PE resources, understand how to use those active PE resources, and have a basic understanding of structuring a PE lesson. When developing an active PE curriculum, ask yourself 3 questions. Why? Why do you want to develop a varied and rich physical education curriculum for your school? How? How are you going to do this to engage the whole school? And what? What are you going to do every day to ensure all children are receiving a high quality PE and physical activity experience? If you need to pause the screen and write down an answer to these questions, please do so. It is important to remember that the most important factor in any PE or physical activity program is the experiences that the children have. Now, what I want you to do is write down 3 things that you want your children to remember from their PE and school sport experience this year. If you need to pause the screen, please do so. Here we're going to take a quick look at the new national curriculum for PE, implemented in September 2014. For this section, please refer to the full PE National Curriculum document in the Active Schools tab on Team Talk. Okay, what do we want to achieve, and most importantly, what do we want the children to achieve from their whole school active PE curriculum? We want them to start to make positive lifestyle choices, both in and out of school, thinking about the things they eat, thinking about the amount of exercise they get. Do they know how many minutes a day of physical activity they should be getting each day? We want to create physically confident and competent and physically active children. And we want to create informed and intelligent players, performers and participants to be able to engage in a whole range of different sports and physical activities. Okay, let's look at what we will teach in order to achieve our aims. On this slide, we're going to focus on fundamental movement skills, a key area on the PE National Curriculum at Key Stages 1 and Key Stage 2. On the left-hand side of the screen, we've listed some fundamental movement skills, so movement, balancing, coordination, agility, ascending, receiving, amongst others. Then we need to look at a few questions. So in what context are we going to deliver our sessions or our lessons to work on those fundamental movement skills? So this is where our areas of PE come in, such as games, dance, gymnastics, outdoor and adventurous activities, athletics and swimming. What's the purpose? So here we reflect to our last slide. So creating intelligent players competing against themselves and others. Creative performers performing to audiences, such as their class or the whole school. And creating determined participants, overcoming challenges and achieving personal bests. Then we need to think about what celebration. So how are we going to celebrate that unit of PE? How are we going to add some purpose to developing those skills? So we could have inter or intra-school festivals and tournaments, i.e. level 1 or level 2 competition. Performances and shows, productions to audiences, again to the class or to the whole school, or is it just for personal satisfaction? And then at the end we're going to think about what's the outcome. So choosing to engage in physical activity at school and in daily life. Here we look at skills and techniques, another key focus on the PE National Curriculum at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So skills and techniques, embedding fundamental skills that we've talked about and acquiring new ones, and then improving techniques. Maybe looking at improving techniques that are a bit more sport specific. In what context? So we want to develop these by accurately repeating actions and sequences, giving the children a chance to master skills and techniques, communicating ideas to audiences, so talking to their peers about it, looking at outwitting opponents, setting up environments where children are able to attempt to outwit their opponent, solving problems and overcoming challenges, and achieving personal bests. What's the purpose? Well, again, we're looking at creating intelligent players competing against self and others, creative performers, performing to audiences such as classmates or whole school, and determined participants, overcoming challenges and achieving personal bests. And again, we need to look at how we're going to celebrate it. So level 1 and level 2 competition, performances and shows, or just personal satisfaction. And then again, the ultimate outcome is to develop children that want to engage in physical activity at school and in daily life. A key part of the PE national curriculum is to develop lessons that include and cater for the needs of children with special educational needs and disabilities. The level of adaptability of each session obviously depends on the level of disability. But children with special educational needs and disabilities, in PE we really are looking at developing those fundamentals of movement, sort of balance, coordination, agility, maybe thinking about different contexts, but really trying to include them with the rest of the class as much as possible. Please contact your service trainer for your next Fit for Sport delivering an inclusive lesson regional training hub. Okay, let's look at some objectives to the Active PE curriculum. A key focus on the national curriculum is for children to succeed and excel in physically demanding activities. Here we look at competitive games, creative games, overcoming challenges, and achieving personal bests. Please take a moment to read the information surrounding this outcome. Another objective is for children to succeed and excel in competitive games. So we're looking at playing competitive games individually and with others in inter and intra-school competitions, festivals and tournaments. So looking at level 1 and level 2 competition. Please pause the screen and take a moment to read the information around this outcome. And this objective is for children to succeed and excel in dance and other creative activities. So we're looking at children performing routines and dances that are pleasing to watch and engaging for audiences. Please pause the screen and take a moment to read the information around this outcome. When developing an active PE curriculum, remember that the national curriculum is the absolute minimum entitlement. Try to build a whole school curriculum that gives each child a much fuller and extensive physical education experience. Remember that each child needs to get 60 minutes of physical activity each day. How will your PE curriculum help them to meet or exceed this? Athletics, dance games, gymnastics, outdoor activities and swimming provide different opportunities to develop physical competence and confidence. Consider including them all in a balanced and broadly based PE curriculum. Use PE as real context through which to develop English and mathematical skills, so try to make it cross-curricular. And remember that really the only curriculum that matters is what is experienced by the children, not what is written or prescribed. Okay, to summarise slightly, when developing a unit of PE, start by picking a unit of physical education from the 9 key PE areas, such as invasion games, gymnastics, dance or swimming. Then choose a celebration or a challenge to aim for, something towards the end of the unit that the children can build to and develop their skills for. It could be a in-school tournament or an inter-school competition. It could be a performance or a routine to a class or to the whole school. Try to engage the parents as well. Then select the core activities and build them into the lessons, progressing as you go for that unit. Don't forget, the core activity progress tracker is a guide only. The children in your class will have different abilities and will be completely different to the class that you teach next or the class that you taught before. Then display buzzwords around the classroom or the school hall. Jump, skip, send, receive, field, defend. Get children thinking about the terminology in their PE lessons. Then when you're delivering the core activities in your PE lessons, give the children autonomy and choice, freedom within the session to explore that core activity. Let them choose their own equipment. Let them make up new rules. This really will get their engagement. Then use assessment for learning techniques, such as questions and answers and peer feedback. This will help them improve their performance and progress throughout the unit. And ultimately, motivate them to be more active more often during the session. Okay, now we're going to look at your Fit for Sport active PE resources. We're going to look at the curriculum map, which is your long-term plan. We're going to look at your core activity progress tracker. We're going to look at U planners, which are your midterm plans, your Z planners, which are your short-term or lesson plans, and then we're going to look at your core activity visual cards and core activity leaders notes. Okay, step 1, your PE curriculum map. This is your long-term planning tool. Your PE curriculum map gives you and your school staff an overview of the units of PE that your children will be participating in across the whole academic year. You will see on this sample, it highlights the year group and the terms. And then in each term, it highlights the unit of PE. On this PE curriculum map, you will see that Year 1 are doing 2 units of PE for each term. It highlights the unit of PE, for example, gymnastics, the core activities that the children will be completing during that unit, for example, activities 1 to 3, and then the celebration at the end of that unit, for example, a performance. You will need to complete a PE curriculum map for every year group that you are delivering physical education to. You can find PE curriculum map templates on your Team Talk account in the Active Schools tab. Your PE curriculum map should cover the 9 main areas of physical education wherever possible. Don't forget, these 9 main areas of physical education are games, gymnastics, dance, athletics, invasion games, net and wall games, striking and fielding games, swimming, and outdoor and adventure. Okay, step 2, your core activity progress tracker. Once you have completed your PE curriculum map for the whole academic year, you then need to start looking at your individual units of PE, i.e. athletics, games, or invasion games. Your core activity progress tracker is your guide to help you start to plan your units. Now don't forget, the core activity progress tracker is just a guide, and you should choose the core activities based on the abilities of the children in your classes. You will find the Active PE core activity progress tracker also in your Team Talk account in the Active Schools tab. The core activity progress tracker enables you to look at the unit of PE that you've chosen. You then refer to the age group that you're delivering to and take note of the core activity numbers that correspond. These core activity numbers do cross over different age groups, so be aware of this. Then, embed these core activities into your unit of PE, choosing core activities that cater for all abilities in your class. It's worth noting that the core activity progress tracker is a guideline only, and your unit of PE should reflect the needs and abilities of your specific group of children. Okay, step 3, U and Z planning, or medium and short-term planning. When developing plans for the whole unit of PE, or our lesson by lesson plans, it is important to start to think about developing the skillful physical being and developing the confident, engaged and thinking being. You will find sample U and Z planners and blank template U and Z planners in your Team Talk account in the Active Schools tab. Okay, the first part of our U planner is a reflection of the last unit delivered. There is space at the top of this section to write the last unit title, the class or year group, the length of that unit, and the start date. Then, on the left-hand side of the main body, this is where you write what the pupils learnt and achieved in the last unit. What skills did they learn? What aspects of body condition did they develop? What decision making did they improve on? And then on the right side of the main body, this is where you write an overview of what core activities they tackled and completed. Don't forget, at the start of a unit, you'll highlight what core activities you want them to tackle and complete, but this is where we write down what they actually did. So an outline of the core activities, and then looking at a proportion of the pupils that still found them too difficult, needed time to develop quality, and that are ready for the next challenge. The second part of our U planner is where we plan for the unit ahead. Again, at the top of this section, there is space for you to write the unit title. In this example, it's Invasion Games. The class or year group. In this example, it's Year 4. The length of the unit, 6 to 8 weeks. And then start date. On the left-hand side of the main body, this is where we write objectives for the unit. What will we see and hear by the end of that unit? What skills? What body condition and health? What decision making and performance skills? And then what self-confidence, enjoyment and engagement? On the right-hand side of the main body, this is where we write an overview of the core activities and pupils' challenge for this unit of PE. Okay, once we have completed our U planners and we are now looking at the whole unit ahead, we need to then implement our Z planners, or our lesson by lesson planners. These are our short-term plans that we use for each unit of PE. There are 4 columns on the Z planner. The first column is our aims and focuses for each lesson. Try not to have more than 2 or 3 aims for each lesson. Don't forget, each PE lesson is typically no longer than 45 minutes. So make sure that we have got aims that are not only realistic for the children to achieve, but also will realistically fit into that lesson. The second column is where we write a brief description of the activities designed to fulfill the aims of the lesson. This is where we focus on our core activities and the adaptations that we will use to cater for the different abilities and needs of the children in our class. The third column is where we write how well our aims are being met, so reflecting back on our first few aims and focuses for that lesson. And then the last column is a space for any comments for any focused pupils and notes. For example, any children that are particularly mastering the core activities, or any children that are particularly struggling in the core activities. It could also be a space to write any comments about children's behaviour. Once we have used the Z planner for our first lesson, we can then move on to the left-hand column again and focus on our second lesson. Okay, step 5, Games Core Activity Visual Sheets and Games Core Activity Leaders Notes. You will find a library of the visual sheets and leaders notes for all of the core activities for all of the units of PE and your Team Talk account in the Active Schools tab. On the left hand side you will see a sample core activity visual sheet. You will see that on this visual sheet at the top of the page there is a title of that core activity, there is age guidance, and then in the main body you will find a series of diagrams to explain how that core activity should be played. On each visual sheet there will be no more than 3 or 4 statements or instructions on how that game is played. On the right hand side of the screen, you will see a sample core activity leaders notes page. This corresponds directly to the core activity visual sheet. At the top of the leaders notes page, again, you will see a title of the core activity and the age range that it is targeted for. Then moving down the page, you will see a list of objectives. These can be transferred directly to your U-planners. Then, underneath that, you will see examples of how to use differentiation and adaptations to make the core activity easier for those children that may be struggling, how to make it harder for those more able children that are mastering that core activity, and extension ideas on how to make that core activity last longer. Then at the bottom of the Leaders Notes page, you will see a full description of how to deliver that basic core activity. You have just had an overview of your active PE resources listed below. Each active PE resource is available in your Team Talk account in the Active Schools tab. It is crucial that you use all of your active PE resources when planning and delivering all physical education within your school settings. The usage of these active PE resources will be checked by your service trainer upon every school site visit and every active PE observational assessment. Okay, once you are comfortable with your active PE planning tools and are familiar with the active PE core activities, you then need to think about creating the active PE lesson. This will be reflected in your Z planner. Think about splitting the lesson into three main components: the beginning bit, the warm-up, the main activity, and the cool down and review at the end. Try to embed aspects of your chosen core activity into each part of the session, such as throwing and catching, teamwork, sending and receiving. Try to create a thread throughout the lesson. Use skills in the warm-up that the children are going to be developing and attempting to master in the core activities that you've chosen for the main activity. Don't forget, we want to give the children as many opportunities as possible to master those skills. Use games and activities that allow children to work in small groups, as opposed to waiting long periods for a turn. And allow for autonomy and choice in selecting equipment and variation of technique and rules. Once you have planned your active PE lesson, try to have the equipment set up before the children enter the activity environment. Make it eye-catching, exciting as soon as they walk in. Get the children moving straight away with simple warm-up activities and games. Remember, try to start using skills that they will need to use in the core activities. Use your chosen core activity as your main section, using the easier, harder and extension activity variances dependent on the children's ability and competence. You'll find these on the core activity leaders notes. Use assessment for learning questions to stimulate thought amongst the children to improve their own and their classmates' performance. Questions such as, why do you think that technique worked? How did you score that goal? What did you do different this time compared to last time? Try to use a consolidation game towards the end of the session that involves the skills that the children have learned or developed throughout the session and their core activities. And then use the cool down period to discuss learning in the session, reflecting on achievements and skills. Okay, let's look at a few points for delivery, starting with the warm-up. What is this for? The children warm up pretty quickly. Let's not exhaust them too early. And what does it need to involve? Don't forget, let's try to create that thread throughout the whole lesson, working on skills that they're going to use in the core activities. So if you're playing a game of tag in a warm-up, try to introduce a ball or throwing and catching if that's what they're going to do in their core activity. And then think about the physiological and psychological benefits of that warm-up. The main activity, this should be core activity driven, using small groups of children to make sure that everybody is engaged. Use the difficulty options and extension activity on the core activity cards to cater for different child abilities. And then play a fun, competitive or consolidation game or performance at the end, if you can, to add value and purpose to those core activities. And then at the end, we have our cool down or our plenary. So use activities that bring the class back together as one unified group, and set up an environment for a review of the lesson and a reflection of achievement to include peer feedback where possible. Okay, so as a review, you should now understand the difference between the active PE resources, understand how to use the active PE resources, understand then how to structure a PE lesson, and be more confident to deliver a core activity based lesson. All of the Active PE resources are available to you on your TeamTalk account in the Active Schools tab. If you have any questions, please contact your service trainer in your region to find out when your next Active PE core activity planning training hub workshop is taking place.